The New York Islanders were on the ice for day one of training camp, but already they've announced two major injury concerns. We discuss what they are and how they'll affect the team, all that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey, and we've got a lot to discuss. The Islanders back on the ice, day one of training camp Thursday, but before they even took to the ice, 2 major injury updates given. We'll discuss them and what they mean for the team. We'll also talk about the line combinations and group combinations that the Islanders put together for day one of practice, and the Islanders' first pick in this year's draft, first overall pick, Mathew Schafer. He was out on the ice against the big boys today for the first time. We'll talk a little bit about that first impression and what it means for the team. All that and more on today's show. Let's start with the injury news. One of them was pretty expected, and the other one was a little bit of a surprise. And let's start with the expected. Semyon Varlamov not ready to start training camp on time. And the Islanders sending out this notification that Semyon Varlamov is skating and progressing, but there is no definitive time frame for when he will rejoin the group. Well, that's certainly not good news. Patrick Waugh, everydayers will remember yesterday we discussed that Patrick Waugh indicated that he knew that Varley was skating, but he didn't know whether or not he'd be ready. He said you have to ask Matthew Darche. And on yesterday's show, I said that probably means he's not going to be ready, because if he was ready, Waugh would just say so. And it turned out that that was an accurate deduction on my part. So Varlamov not ready. He is skating on his own. No timetable. The no timetable thing is a little bit more of a concern, because we are about 3.5 weeks away from opening night of the season. And in my mind, under those circumstances, the odds of him actually being ready to start the season on time, I mean, yes, he's skating on his own. I think, I don't know, but I'm reasonably confident that his season will start a little bit late. If it starts at all, we don't know. That he will likely get a conditioning stint in Bridgeport when and if he's ready to go. And we'll kind of take it from there to see whether or not he can play. Now, last year, played only 10 games and was done shortly after American Thanksgiving. And look, I think a healthy Semyon Varlamov is still the Islanders' best available option to be the backup goalie. However, you signed David Rittich, Matthew Darche doing that. You still have a goalie in Marcus Hogberg with NHL experience. So if Rittich gets hurt or Rittich struggles, or if Hogberg outplays Rittich, those are your options. And again, in my mind, the Islanders are okay with Rittich or Hogberg for a couple of weeks, a month, maybe. But over the course of the season, you either need to get a healthy Semyon Varlamov back, or you need the Rittich of 2 years ago, where he was just really, really good last year, even though he was playing, behind one of the better defensive teams in the league in the LA Kings. He struggled. So it's definitely a concern. So that was the first of the two injury updates. We know that Semyon Varlamov not on the ice right now, not ready to start practicing with the team, no timetable for his return to practice, let alone a game, a preseason game, a scrimmage, a regular game. And then the other announcement came kind of out of left field because we did not have any information about it before Thursday. Pierre Engvall had off-season hip surgery. He will miss the start of training camp and is estimated to return to practice in 2 to 3 weeks. Okay. First of all, you got a timetable. So that's at least a positive. We know how long Pierre Engvall is going to be out. The problem is that if you're Pierre Engvall, you were battling for a roster spot, and that roster spot was not guaranteed. Remember, a year ago, the Islanders had to place him on waivers, sent him down to Bridgeport, in part because of cap considerations, but largely in part because Pierre Engvall didn't play well enough and didn't play the style that Patrick Roy wanted him to play consistently for him to earn a spot in the lineup. And yeah, he had some good games down the stretch last year, but he still wasn't consistent enough. And it's all about style for Pierre Engvall. Will you go to the dirty areas? Will you fight for loose pucks? Will you go to the net? Will you shoot the puck? When he does those things, the things that Patrick Roy wants him to do, he can be an effective third-line player. The problem is he doesn't do that on a consistent basis. That more or less 3 games out of 10, he may do that. He may put together a good week, week and a half, 2 weeks even, and then won't play the way Patrick Roy wants him to play for 2-3 weeks or longer. And that's when he ends up being a black ace or being sent back to Bridgeport. And the thing about Pierre Engvall, the talent is there. He's a fast skater. He can shoot the puck. He's got a long reach. He doesn't play physically, and that's something that, again, not every player is going to do that. But if he doesn't go to the dirty areas, if he doesn't go to the net, if he doesn't play the way he's asked to play, his effectiveness is very limited. And for him, let's even say it's 2 weeks. Let's say it's on the conservative side of 2 to 3 weeks. Let's say he's back and skating on October 2nd or 3rd. That only gives him 1 week of practice before the season starts. And that's the conservative side. That's the 2 weeks. If he has a setback, it could be more than 3 weeks. If it's 3 weeks, he's coming back roughly around the time that the season starts. So his chances of making the team were not guaranteed. We talked on yesterday's show, Everydayers will remember, about the fact that there is competition for spots on this roster, for spots on the fourth line. Engvall's lack of physicality doesn't make him a good fourth line fit. And I think the roster is very crowded in the top 9. I'm not saying the Islanders have elite talent here. They still need more top 6 talent. But Engvall is really a third-line player at best. And he just, I think his chances of making the opening day roster just went down. Now, on the flip side, the good side of this, from an Islanders perspective, you could now send him down to Bridgeport to start the season on a conditioning stint, and he wouldn't have to pass through waivers. Now, you may have to have him pass through waivers if you don't want to bring him back up or once the conditioning stint ends. But initially, if you need him to play his way back into shape, you can now send Pierre Engvall down to Bridgeport on a conditioning stint for a week or two and let him, get back into game shape by playing in Bridgeport. I still don't see a spot for him on this team other than as one of the reserve forwards. It just doesn't seem to be adding up. The math, you've got too many guys. You got Siplikov, you've got Shabanov, you've got Cizikas, you've got Heineman, you've got Gatcomb, you've got McLean. These are just guys competing for the fourth line. And like I said, Engvall's style of play doesn't fit the fourth line. Look, all other considerations aside, I wish Pierre Engvall a complete and speedy recovery, and it only benefits the Islanders if he can come back, be better than ever, and play the way the coaching staff wants him to play on a consistent basis. But I think right now his chances of making the opening night roster, which weren't great to begin with, took an even bigger hit. But it may make things easier for the Islanders logistically to have him start the season at Bridgeport on a conditioning stint, and that will allow them to do that without making him pass through waivers. And if he plays really well down there, maybe somebody claims him or wants to trade for him. Who knows? We'll see. We've got a lot more to talk about on today's show. We'll take you inside day one of practice, talk about the line combinations, the way the Islanders set things up, the group combinations. We'll talk about Mathew Schafer's first day at training camp, and for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a player who had a huge impact on the team. This is an easy one. First captain and a longtime broadcaster. We'll talk about him and his legacy, all that and more, next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. That's $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Maybe you like using player props or building a same-game parlay to try to win even more. Or you could jump in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com. Check it out today. The Islanders were out there on the ice. More than 60 players at Islanders camp. And they had 3 groups: the blue, the white, and the orange. The orange group was mostly players who I think are destined for either juniors or the minor leagues. And you had goalies like Henrik Tikkanen, Parker Gahagen, Burke Hood. You had Luke Rowe and Cam McDonald as the only 2 defensemen in this group. And then the forwards, Chris Terry, Dalen Kufler, Cameron Berg, Max Dorrington, Cam Thiesing, Ross Mitten, Matthew Maggio, Hunter Drew, Eetu Liukas. I would be surprised if any of those guys were out there opening night. And none of those, all of those guys may not play even a single game for the big club this year. Nothing wrong with that. That is perfectly fine, but that was the orange group. The blue group, you had Simon Holmstrom, Anthony Duclair, Bo Horvat, Julien Gauthier, Jonathan Drouin, Liam Foudy, J.G. Pajot, Alex Jeffries, Maxim Shabanov, Cal Ritchie, Gleb Veremyev, and Luka Romano as the forwards. Cole McWard, Alexander Romanov, Adam Boqvist, Isaiah George, Kashawn Aitchison, Sean Day, Ethan Bear, and Tony DeAngelo as your defensemen, Sorokin and Hogberg, your goalies. And then the white team, or the white group, you had forwards Siplikov, Barzal, Gatcomb, Matthew Highmore, Kyle Palmieri, Anders Lee, Kyle McLean, Emil Heineman, Casey Cizikas, Joey Larson, Adam Beckman, Tomasz Politin. And then on the blue line, Pelech, Polak, Mayfield, Travis Mitchell, Callie Odelius, Marshall Warren, Jesse Pulkkinen, and Mathew Schafer. And then Rittich and Tristan Lennox were your goalies. But to me, the interesting thing, the line combinations, because Patrick Waugh, he mentioned there were 3 lines that he was saying were his first option, the top 3 lines. And he sort of started with those lines together, and then everything else was up in the air. So the blue group line combinations, Horvat, Drouin, and Shabanov, Pajot, Duclair, and Holmstrom, Ritchie, Foudy, and Gauthier, Romano, Veremyev, and Jeffries. On defense, Romanov, DeAngelo, George, Boqvist, Aitchison, Bear, Day, McWard. For the white group, the line combinations, Cizikas, Heineman, Siplikov, which would be a logical 4th line for opening night if they put Sippy on the 4th line. McLean, Gatcomb, and Beckman, Highmore, Politin, and Larson. Your defensive pairings, Pelech and Polak, Schaefer and Mayfield, Pulkkinen and Odelius, Mitchell and Warren. So what we see at the start was that the line combinations that Patrick Waugh indicated he was starting with is where he is actually starting. He kept his word with regard to that. And we'll see how long they stay together. We all know that the Islanders and Patrick Waugh tend to prefer to mix and match lines. It's kind of what they do. And it changes often. By the way, Patrick Waugh indicating that even though Cal Ritchie is on a line with guys who are AHL players, most likely, doesn't mean that's where he's going to finish training camp. So he basically tried to say, don't read too much into it. But Patrick Waugh, the starting point he said he was going to go to is where he went. And I think to a point, these lines make sense. I still think that Maxim Siplikov should not be on the 4th line. I would like to see him in the middle 6, whether it's the 2nd line or the 3rd line. But again, the way this team is set up, they don't have genuine top line players on the wing. Their forward group, that they have a few 2nd line guys and a lot of 3rd, 4th line guys, but not a lot of 1st line wingers. And as a result, there's this crowd of guys in the middle. You have guys on the 1st line that are kind of reaching for the 1st line. They're kind of shooting above where, like on a good team, Kyle Palmieri is a 2nd or 3rd line player. probably a second-line player on an average team, let's say. Simon Holmstrom, third line, maybe second line. And yet, it just seems like if Shabanov on the first line is more because they don't have any established first line guys and they want to see what the kid can do. But I don't think, especially right off the bat, right out of the gate, that he's going to be a legitimate first line guy. I'd love for him to prove me wrong. But that adjustment period to the NHL, the change in the style of play, I just don't see him. He may fit, his skills may fit, but I don't see him being ready right away to play on the top line. So we'll see how it all shuffles out. Like I said, Patrick Roy tends to mix and match his lines, especially when the team is struggling to score goals. And unfortunately, over the last several years, that's been the case more often than not. So we'll see. But I want to see Siplikov in the middle six. I think that's where you utilize him best, whether it's the second line or the third line, second power play unit. We'll see. But it's going to be interesting to see how all of this shakes out. This is going to be a competitive and interesting training camp to look forward to. Another thing that is interesting at training camp that we've got to mention, Mathew Schafer, first overall pick in this year's draft. He hit the ice against the big boys today for the first time. We're going to talk about that and our Islanders' birthday of the day next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Mathew Schafer, 18 years old. The big question, does he stick with the team all year? Every indication seems to be that they're going to give him every chance to do that, that they kind of think he will be on the big club. He opened up, as I mentioned, being paired with Scott Mayfield, and everydayers will remember just yesterday, I said Mayfield is the most logical pairing for him initially because of his size, his experience, his physicality, his knowledge of the system. We'll see. And Schaefer, as always, knows the right things to say. Not a guy with a huge ego or a me attitude. Here's what he said about earning a spot. He said, yeah, 100%. I think everybody's looking to earn that big spot in the locker room with the guys. Looking to get in the big room over there, a little bit more resources in that room, I'd say, cold tubs and stuff, talking about the trainers and how, they get treated. So, we mentioned Wah yesterday talking about bringing him along the way they brought Nathan MacKinnon along back when he was coaching the Avalanche, kind of more gradual, less pressure. And MacKinnon did win Rookie of the Year, Calder Trophy that year. Wah had this to say: he's a quality person. He just wants to learn. I think when you're saying things that make sense, he's smart enough to use it. So we'll see. And Schaefer, again, I want to see from his perspective, talking about Wah, what he thinks I need to work on, what I've got to get better at. I want him to tell me when I'm not working my best, and he knows that I have more in me. It's just awesome to have guys like that who can push you to be your best. Casey Cizikas also kind of taking note of the way Mathew Schafer is playing. The work that he puts in, the dedication that he has to the game, and the way that he conducts himself every single day. He's a pro in and out. He had a good rookie camp leading up to this. First day on the ice went well, and now we just got to keep moving forward with each day. A lot of observers felt that Schaefer did stand out during the first day of training camp. that's a very good sign. Again, I am not going to come out here and say Mathew Schafer will be an all-star this year. He'll be on the top pair. He's going to play 27 minutes a game, and he's going to be out there on power play 1 and penalty kill, and he'll be dominating games as a rookie. No, I'm not saying that. And I think Patrick Roy's approach makes sense. Bring him along gradually. Let him earn his way up in the lineup. First thing he's got to do is make the team. You start small, right? First, you make the team. He already did well at rookie camp, clearly stood out there. He made a good impression with the veterans on day 1 of training camp. Sunday is the first preseason game for the New York Islanders. I can't believe it. We're here, right? Sunday in Philadelphia, 7 o'clock Eastern time. We'll talk about it on Monday's show. I'm eager to see Mathew Schafer on the ice in an Islanders uniform for the first time against another team. So we'll see how he does. I'm eager to see it, and I think he will be able to have a solid rookie season full of growth and progress. I don't think he's going to be an all-star this year. I'd love for that to be wrong. I'd love for him to be outstanding from the get-go. But I think the player that we see October 9th on opening night will not be the same player we see at the end of the season. We'll see a better, more mature, more experienced, better equipped to succeed player by the end of the season out of Mathew Schafer than we see in the beginning. It's an exciting time when you have the first overall pick playing in his first preseason game. And again, we'll talk about that on Monday's show. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. This is an easy one, obviously, but today is the 85th birthday of former Islanders winger, captain, and broadcaster Ed Westfall. Very first captain in Islanders history, a native of Belleville, Ontario, 6'1", 197 pounds. Made his NHL debut in 1961 with the Boston Bruins. Won 2 Stanley Cups with the Bruins, with Bobby Orr and Phil Esposito in 1970 and 72, and was selected by the Islanders in the expansion draft, stayed with the team through the 78-79 season, and then hung up his skates. Great penalty killer, checker, had a couple of 20-plus goal seasons with the Islanders in 74-75 and 75-76. If you go back and either watch or listen to my interview with original Islander Bill Mickelson a couple of weeks ago, he talked about the importance of Ed Westfall and his experience and what he meant to that young team that first year. There is no doubt that Westfall was a big part of the Islanders' growth from their expansion season all the way through till they won, would have been the President's Trophy if it existed in 78-79. They had the best record in hockey. 1,226 career NHL regular season games, 231 goals, 625 points, 544 penalty minutes, add 22 goals and 59 points in 95 playoff games. I mentioned the 2 cups he won with Boston. He did not win a cup with the Islanders. He was in the broadcast booth, though, with Jids McDonald for the Islanders 4 Stanley Cup seasons. Well, Jigs came in year 2 of the 4-year cup run. We're going to go back and look at a monumental goal, the very last goal in the career of Ed Westfall, April 22nd, 1979, Game 4 of the quarterfinal playoff series. Islanders up 3-0, visiting Chicago Stadium to face the Blackhawks. 2 Hall of Fame goalies, Billy Smith and Tony Esposito. And in this game, with the Islanders up 1-0 early in the second period. Our Islanders' birthday of the day, Ed Westfall, pots the very last goal of his career. Wayne Merrick and Stefan Pearson get the assist. Islanders go on to win the game by a score of 3-1. Ed Westfall, a +1. He had the goal. It was the game winner, and he had 2 shots on goal in this game. Billy Smith, 27 saves. The Islanders go on to sweep the series from the Blackhawks, and that was the very last goal in the career of Ed Westfall. Ed Westfall, a great guy, interviewed him for my book. A great Islander player, leader, and broadcaster. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no off season. We're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYRVSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long. It's always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you anytime. Everydayers, we're back on Monday, and we'll have our takeaways from the first preseason game against the Flyers as we ramp back up toward Islanders hockey. We'll talk about the latest news from practice, injury updates, Schaefer updates, and a whole lot more, so make sure you join us for that. Until then, have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.